Hi, everybody. My name is Carlos Gutierrez. I'm co-founder and executive director of Cinema Tropical, and want to welcome you all to this special conversation series, TropiChat 20s, with key filmmakers from Latin America. And it's my great pleasure to welcome our special guest of the day, the Chilean director, Dominga Sotomayor. Dominga, ¿cómo estás? Welcome.
Bien, too. Thank you so much for inviting me, and congrats for the anniversary of Cinema Tropical. Already 20 years, it's great.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been 20 years. And a great pleasure to be talking to you about your work and your films. Before we start, I'm just going to give the official introduction. Dominga studied directing at the Universidad Católica de Chile and a master's in directing at SCAC in Barcelona. She developed her first feature film, Thursday to Sunday, Jueves a Domingo, at the Cannes Cinefondación residence. And the film won the Tiger Award for Best Film in Rotterdam in 2012 and was screened in over 100 festivals. In 2013, she co-directed The Island, that also won the Tiger Award. And in 2015, she premiered her mid-length film, Mar, at the Berlinale Forum, as well as the collective film here in Lisbon, produced by Indy Lisboa. In 2018, her film, To Lie Today Young, had its world premiere at the Locarno Film Festival, where it won the Golden Leopard for Best Director, marking a first time that a female filmmaker won the prize in the festival's history. Her newest film project, the omnibus film, The Year of the Everlasting Storm, will premiere at Cannes in a few weeks. And in addition to her work as a director, she has also served as a producer through her production company Cine Estación in projects such as Los Fuertes by Omar Zúñiga, Murder Me Monster by Alejandro Fadel, and Raging Helmet by Neto Villalobos from Costa Rica. And she also co-founded CCC, Centro de Cine y Creación, a cultural center in art house cinema, which opened in Santiago, Chile in 2019. And 6 of her films are playing on Ovid TV here in the US, if you are interested in watching her feature films and some of her short films. And we thank Ovid TV for co-presenting this conversation. Again, welcome, Dominga. Pretty impressive biography. Let's start from the beginning. I'm curious about how was your first immersion into cinema? When you decided to make when you decided to become a filmmaker?
I don't think I have like the traditional story of someone watching too many films. As a girl, I was growing up in a place that was similar to the one that I portrayed in Too Late to Die Young. So it was a place near to the mountains without electricity. But my first contact, I'll say now also watching in retrospective, is my mother, that she was acting in soap operas. So I wasn't really watching too many films, but I was visiting the studios of the TV. By that time, I didn't connect TV with cinema at all, but I remember these days like losing the TV station because I was the only child. So I was more in contact with theater, like with theater and TV. As a child, I was accompanying my mother to the rehearsals of the plays. I was in the TV station, and I was also really close to artists that I admire until today, like my grandmother or some neighbors that were also painters. And I think I discovered cinema when I was around 16, or like the cinema that I'm more interested now, with my grandmother, that is a big cinephile, and also with a teacher in the school that was the history teacher, and she was also kind of in love with films, and she was showing us some films in the school. I think that was kind of my first approach to cinema. I remember watching, for example, Kiarostami, and films that I realized were closer to my life or the way I was kind of observing things. And I thought, I started to be very curious of how they were making these films, and I was starting to watch more films. But it was later, it was like 16, 17.
Including Chilean films? And were you watching Chilean films as well, or at this point?
There were some films, but there were like three Chilean films per year. It wasn't, but I didn't discover Raul Ruiz by that time, for example. That was later. I was watching the films that were in cinemas, but that time also there were good films, good like European films arriving to cinemas in Chile. Later it was more difficult to watch. Like it becomes more commercial and yeah, and also, so I was playing in the theater, and I had this obsession with photographs. So I had my lab in my house, and yeah. So I think cinema was kind of an accident of many interests. I was confused about what to do because I was really into math, into chemics, into history, and I thought I wanted to do something very different from my mother. So I was about to study theater, and I thought cinema would be very different. I wasn't that far, but it was kind of a rebellion of not doing something that close to my mother and not to be an actress.
And what was the experience of studying film in Chile and later in Spain, in Barcelona?
It was very interesting because I was in the first generation of the Universidad Católica. That school was closed in the dictatorship with directors like Ignacio Agüero. Ignacio Agüero was in the last generation of that school, and then it was closed for the dictatorship. And then they reopened with my generation. So it was special. It was a school in construction. I'm not sure it was that good, but at least was really interesting what was happening there. And I was studying with Omar Zúñiga, for example, with Maite Alberdi, that you might know. So it was a generation of many interesting colleagues and classmates. And I think I arrived to fiction like an accident studying there. I did my first short films there, also with my mother acting on it, with the friends of my mother, with my friends. And I did Debajo. It was my last short film in Chile. That was a very experimental fiction that I shot just from above. And then I was around 21 and I moved to Barcelona with this scholarship to do a master for a year in SCAC. And I continued doing short films. I did 2 more short films there, La Montaña and Videojuego, The Mountain and Video Game. And yeah, but I think it's interesting because even that short films are really similar of what I'm doing now. Like I can compare my first fiction with my last short film that I just did last year in the pandemic, and I don't think I'm moving too far of my origins.
Before we talk about the specifics about the films, I was mentioning that we recently had Clever Mendoza Filho as a guest as well, Brazilian director, and we were talking about kind of this hegemony of the feature film. And I find very interesting that both you and him, you've created a very solid body of work with short films. Like it doesn't seem that you're tied by the formats, that you go back and make short films, feature films. You even made music videos that it seems like you're very free with going back and forth in different formats. So can you tell us a little bit about it, and also how do you see this kind of a apparently tension between the short film and the feature film? What's the big difference for you?
Yeah, I've been doing everything. Like I remember after my little short films of film school, I did Thursday till Sunday, and then I got this invitation to do The Island, that is a really like a co-directed short film. And then I met Mar, that it was an improvisation in Argentina, and then Thursday Too Late to Die Young. And I really trust in dispersion, and I love how I can experiment some different things in short films. I think I also love invitations. Like last year I did a correspondence with Carla Simón, and also was kind of an accident. So in a way, I always know what will be my next feature film, but I'm open to experiment in the middle, to make this correspondence or some co-directed short films. It's interesting how this little project has changed my work. Like, for example, from Thursday till Sunday to Too Late to Die Young, I did these smaller projects in the middle, and I think I kind of opened my way of shooting. I started being more flexible to improvisation. I realized I wanted to be portray something that is more alive than a script. And when I started, it was more strict. I was more like focusing the script and the storyboard, and now I feel I'm kind of more open to experiment, and I love these invitations. I think I see my work as a mix of things, and not just in the films that I made, but also in what I do. I think I really like producing friends. I'm the artistic director of the cinema, so of course I'm a director or writer director, but I'm feeling more like someone that is enthusiastic about cinema and creative things with friends, and doesn't matter if it's an exhibition or it's a film. But I love short films. I think short films are really like fast, cheap, free, and I love how you can try things there, and I think it's a specific and interesting format for its length also.
You were mentioning that how your first short films are, are directly linked to your more recent work, and I find that very interesting. How since the beginning, watching Montaña Mountain, family affairs, the Nahual. So the family affairs are there in the center of your narratives. Where does that come from? You're really good at portraying all the family interactions and the subtlety that goes in between those relationships.
Yeah, I think the origin of my film is my experience. It's just like what I'm observing and what I remember, what I dream, and I'm always kind of observing situations that seems to be not interesting, but I can see like a kind of a situation there. I'm interested in portray what seems to be not interesting, and to accumulate things that kind of build something in the process. So I'm more interested in documenting emotions and kind of little gestures rather than big stories. For example, for Too Late to Die Young, is of course a film that is inspiring a very specific moment in Chile, that it was the transition to democracy, but I was more into what was happening in the ambience, what was happening with this community, what was emotionally happened to the people in this process, rather than portraying like what was in the newspaper or what I can read somewhere else. So some people say that my films are really autobiographical. I will say are more like personal. I don't think autobiographical is the word. I think there are always films that are crossed by my experience, and yeah, I don't know. I don't think much about that. I just, it's very spontaneous, and it's very kind of organic how everything started. I'm just mixing things that I observe, things that I like, things I think are particular and special to me. Yeah, this is the origin. And for example, for Thursday till Sunday, the origin was a picture of a trip that I did with my little cousin and my parents when I was young. So I kind of, it's not the same, but the origin is this picture that I found where my cousin and I were in the top of on the roof of a car, traveling there. And I found this picture late, like, I don't know, 20 years later. And I thought it was interesting, this contradiction of these kids in the top of the car and the parents inside. And then I start like building the fiction from that starting point.
I'm curious, what was that photograph very similar to the way you shot that?
It's very similar. It's very similar.
Which is very iconic. It became very iconic.
Yeah, it's very similar. And then, yeah, I think I've been thinking a lot on this because it's a very weird time to talk about cinema, no? We've been in this confinement, and I think I've been thinking a lot on why I'm making films also in this crisis, in these times where art is kind of, why should I do these very personal films? I don't know, it's a time to think a lot. So yeah, probably my films will also kind of transform after all of this. I hope, because I hope we will all be different after all this.
Yeah. And it's not only the pandemic, but also more specifically, Chile as well has gone through another transformation, which we see in your short film Correspondence. But before we go into more that political aspect and how that's affecting your work and inspiring you as well for the future, let's just talk a little more about Thursday to Sunday and to Die Young, in the sense that what I also find very, very exciting is that and very intriguing is that both of them are like a very nice diptych of sorts. Like they mirror each other and seems like a kind of almost like a natural continuation. In Thursday to Sunday is like the experience of the kids, and basically it's the same. We could imagine it with the same kid in Too Late to Die Young, or I want to think it's almost the same kid, which you were talking about personal films, autobiographical, which probably leads to yourself. So can you elaborate more in that personal connection between both films?
Yeah. Now watching the films, I have the same feeling. I think it's actually Too Late to Die Young start like Thursday till Sunday. It's like the continuation in the car. I wasn't conscious about that. I think I'm repeating myself, not being that conscious, but I also had the feeling that you can put all my films in one line, and it's like a long story that I'm kind of zooming in some specific fragments, even in Debajo and my early shorts. I can kind of put...
and the island can also perfectly fit there. And I would say also even Mar would be after
later
to that young, no? It seems like
yeah.
we all...
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's in the line of the same exploration, no? Of how also kind of putting in doubt who are the adults. Thursday till Sunday is also about like growing up, and I think Too Late to Die Young also is about transitions. It's about these ages in between, no? That are so difficult to portray because it's not one and not the other. It's just what is happening in this transformation of being a kid and become to be an adolescent, or be an adolescent and start to be an adult. So I'm really curious about this transformation, this loss of illusions. And I think in case of Too Late to Die Young, it's a little bit more complex because it's not just about the character, but also about like a community, no? I was trying to portray this illusion or disillusion of these teenagers, but also of a country that I was kind of trying to learn to live with this new freedom that was democracy. So I think for me, Too Late to Die Young is a bit more complex, and I was also, and I think it's more like, it's a more open film. It's a film that is more like full of digressions, and it's more in the line what I wanted to keep exploring also. Films that are more close to the shape of life, or to the shape of how I experience life today.
Another constant in your work, which is fascinating, is the use of non-urban spaces. In most of them, basically, the characters are in a place rather than the city, which traditionally coming of ages coming of age stories or family affairs films are usually set in an urban space. So I'm really intrigued also about that decision. Is it? I'm sure it's a really conscious decision to kind of take the characters outside of those environments that are traditionally linked to, no?
Yeah, yeah. I haven't think about that much, but I think it's interesting that all the films are about characters in crisis, and when you are in a crisis, you are trying to escape. And for example, in the case of Thursday till Sunday, there is this illusion of escaping, to making a trip to kind of fix this tension in the family, but they cannot escape from themselves. And so I think it's a trip of illusion. It's like a road movie inverted, where what is important is behind all the time. No, the better times are behind, like, and I was really interested in the desert and observing this couple in this dry landscape that is kind of talking with them, or at least really related on how I was seeing this dry couple that cannot escape from their own. And so yeah, I'm really interested in the spaces, not just like a landscape, but also like a dramatic character, where, for example, in Too Late to Die Young, I wanted this character be part of the place. No, it's not a place that is. It's not like characters arriving to the place. It's more like a place that is inhabited and is connected, and it's like a system where if there is a horse that dies in the river, this water will contaminate a guy. So I think I wanted to play specifically in Too Late to Die Young with the erasing the borders between the nature and the human, and the interiors and the exteriors. That's why the house doesn't have any walls, or I don't know, the dog is inside and the bathroom is outside. I wanted to play with that. And yeah, I'm really interested in the relationship of the characters and the space, and the dramatic element of the landscape as a. And again, it's also very spontaneous. When I saw in Thursday till Sunday, I was sure it was in the desert. I was sure it was all around a car. So I think it's kind of an accumulation of images that then I start kind of, how se dice, amasar, like I don't know.
Coming together, shaping form.
Yeah,
giving form to.
Like a bread, no? Like I'm just accumulating, and that's my process. For example, now I feel I'm writing a film, but I'm not writing, but I'm accumulating images, and then I write.
You're mentioning that the characters in your films are going through crisis, but what's very interesting is that it's kind of an unusual approach, because many other filmmakers, I would say probably most of them, they would go for the dramatic aspect of the crisis, and you go to the opposite, through the emotions. So they're going to crisis, but it's not about the drama of the crisis, or it's not the big dramatic of the crisis, but rather, as we were mentioning, the emotional. How do you construct those emotionals? What's also interesting is that you avoid the typical kind of plot-driven narratives to focus more on the ambience, on the feelings, on the emotions of the characters and the setting. So how do you create that? Is that from the writing, from the mise en scène? How do you create these emotions?
I trust in the writing a lot. I think it's a long process of writing and rewriting and observing and listening real conversations. I think everything that I write is coming from something real, even if I transform everything and it's not documentary at all, because I love fiction and it's all a construction, but every character and every situation is coming from something that I've seen, or I dream, or I know. So I think the work of the characters and the emotions come from the writing. And then something that is very important for me is the casting and the work with the actors. And I think they are everything, I think you cannot, I don't know, you cannot lie. with the actors. They are not acting, they're being someone. So I have like a very close relationship with the actors, and I think for me acting is to portray them in the context of my story, but I'm basically trying to get very close to what they're feeling, what is happening there. So I think that's the real process, is to understand what is behind every person I'm working with and trying to work with that emotions. So it's not about acting emotions, it's about like connecting with themselves. So it's usually very intense for them. In Too Late to Die Young, I think they were very young and they were all past kind of crossing very important process. And yeah, and it was intense, and yeah, and Tar, that was playing Lucas, always say that that film is like a document of him in that time, or a document of his emotion of that time. So I'm very grateful, you say, of them. I think it's yeah, and yeah, and in the emotion is also coming from the mise-en-scène. No, it's a mix of everything. This is what makes cinema so fascinating. I think that is that connection, but it's also something physical that makes me decide to look at them from some perspective. And I think I really like to work very close to the cinematographers. I think for me, the writing is very connected with the framing. So while I'm writing, I'm already imagining how it's gonna look, or how is the framing, how is, yeah. So I think it's connected, but I don't know how to explain better.
You were talking about your process with actors. Was it influenced by your mom, and by your relationship with your mom, and having a mom that's an actor?
Yeah, no, what I think that I wasn't conscious at that time, but I think now, is that I've never been afraid of actors, so, or not much. That is something that was really difficult when we were studying. Everybody's like, I don't know how to deal with actors. I'm like, I'm dealing with actors all the time. So, and I, yeah, I was lucky or not to have this connection, and I was always working with people that wanted to work with me also. This is like a rule for me. I don't want to work with an actor because he's a good actor. I want to work with someone that is nice and wanted to work with me. So for me, the process was really natural, because I was working with my mother, with the friends of my mother, with an actor that was a friend, with people that are not friends or not non-actors. And that's funny, because I talk with the students about this, that directors are always afraid of actors, and actors are always afraid of directors. So it's like
it's a vicious circle, kind of.
Yeah, no, my mother is an actress, but it's more than that. In my films, I think she's a great inspiration. I think she's someone that tells good stories. She's a really good narrator, and I remember I don't know, she telling me these stories where I were really young, and they were very particular stories, and she's always finding interesting things out of the blue, you know, like she's really like a good observer, and she's in almost all my films, and her dreams are in my films, and I think I'm kind of stealing a little bit her life in my films, I have to be honest.
So being not afraid of actors, that's what led you also to experiment with professional actors, with non-actors. And I also find very interesting how you mixed different actors with different types of training, and particularly children. And we can talk also about your casting.
Yeah, I've been trying different things. In Thursday till Sunday, it was interesting because I worked with two famous actors, the parents, and two kids without any experience. And that mixture was interesting because I think the actors were playing better because they had this uncomfortness of the kids non-acting, no, being spontaneous. And I also did like a parallel script for the kids, so they were not rehearsal, they were more like just playing. And I think that mixture was interesting. And then in Mar, they were a real couple. And that was also interesting because, for example, we had to do a sex scene that is out of the film. And I thought it gonna be easier because they were a couple, and it was actually much difficult. It was really like, how can I direct you to have sex? It's like, do what you know. And then in Too Late to Die Young, there were a lot of actors, and it was a mixture between kids without experience, professional actors, and adults that were not actors, people from the plays. And I don't know, I think it was interesting. It was a super challenging film I had to be able to put all in the same mood, and try basically talk to them in the same way, even if they were actors or not actors, because it was like the same community and same, I don't know, world. It was difficult, but I love to do that mixings. I think that creates something uncomfortable or strange that makes more alive the scenes also. And sometimes working with non-actors is even easier for me than with actors.
In a horrible cliche of cinema, they say, and I hate kind of repeating it, but said like, don't work with kids and animals. But I guess I can't help because you work a lot with kids. So how's your own process working with kids particularly? Do you enjoy the process? It seems like you work with different kids, in many of your films. So, I'm sure you enjoy.
Yeah. It's a difficult question because I think when you ask about kids, you are asking about like many different persons also. I've been working with so many kids, and it's been very different depending of them or the age. But basically, I think the casting is very important. I decide never like a traditional casting for kids. So I never make like an open call of 500 kids. Usually I make like a scouting with kids that I know. I don't know, just people that I know that wanted to make a film, or people that my mother know, and then we create like a little group, and we, for example, for my last film, Too Late to Die Young, we did like a workshop. One weekend, a workshop of 10 little kids, and we were playing, and I was observing them, and we were doing some things, and then I decided who will be the main characters and who will be the friends or the secondaries. Same with the teenagers. So I think I would say the shooting starting the casting is already like a process where they become friends, and for me it's more important to be close to them as person than the rehearsal. So I don't make much rehearsals. It's more like inviting them to my house, doing some plays, games, I would say. And I basically I don't think kids will be acting. They're more like reacting and playing, and kids are good playing. So if they like you, they will like to play with you. And I'm trying all the time to create like a parallel script where I have some games or ideas for them to arrive to my script, but I never give them the script. So it's more like, I don't know. I want them to have fun, and I want them to be themselves. So, yeah.
Can you talk more specifically? I'm sorry?
No, sorry.
No, I was going to ask about, it's more specifically about the casting of Demian Hernandez in the role of Sofia. And also, I mean, in addition to the casting itself, which I think he plays a wonderful role, the actor transition, it's a transgender actor, and he transitioned after the role. So I'm also curious how much the transformation of the man also added another layer in terms of the reception of the film, or even the promotion of the film, because it's like this extra cinematic element which was added somehow to the film.
Yeah, when I met Demian, I had a very different idea for the casting of the film. I thought it's in a girl like with long hair, maybe more like similar to me, or not similar, but and when I met Demian, there was a friend of the girlfriend of my brother that was kind of she arrived because of that. I thought it was really complex, and I love the definition that she by that time had. It was kind of adult but kid, female but masculine, and I really liked him. I thought it was super complex, and I was looking for kids or teenagers that were complex because what I was saying before, I think it's a film about transitions, it's a film about indefinitions, and it's also a film about kids that are already too old for their age, or they're living too much for being so young, and kind of. So I love him, and we start working together. And at the end of the shooting, even so, it was she while we were shooting, and after the shooting, we were editing, and he contacted me to ask me if we could change the credits to Demian. And it's when he started the process of transition. And I was accompanying the process. Of course, we were very open to change the credits, and it was important for me also. I was never so close to a process of transition that it was my first time. And I remember it was his birthday, and we were about to go to Locarno for the premiere. And he told me, it's amazing that this film will be my last register as a girl. It was my last presence as a woman, and I'm going now to Locarno to present the film as a boy. And I was yes. And I think it was a learning process for me. It was a learning process for him. I think it was also like a gift that he has this film to process this. And then it was delegated. We were trying to don't use this for the promotion of the film and to be very delicate, because some people will mention it was she because it was confusing. No, the character's name is Sophia, so it was kind of a delicate process, but I think it was fine. And yeah, and he continued his process of transition, taking hormones, and it's fine.
Did he pursue an acting career? Did he do more acting after this film, or? Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, he did some small things. I don't know much, but he did some music videos, short films. I don't think he made another feature film yet. He's more like a musician.
You were mentioning that what inspired Thursday till Sunday was that image from the car. So I'm also curious because also in Too Late to Die Young, the car also has an important element with the film. Where is that interest or obsession? I don't know, or like or the use of car as a in your films.
Yeah, I was really obsessed of driving while I was really young. I started driving when I was 13. So I think there is something there that is maybe very unconscious, but I think it has to do with freedom to wanted to move out from somewhere, and I love driving since I'm very little, and then I'm also like very much old cars as my father. Like my father already had like a very old car all the time. Me too. And so yeah, I did. I think I know first who would be the car in the film than the actors. Also for Thursday till Sunday, the car was very important. I was obsessed with this specific car, this Mazda, and then the Niva in Today. I remember being a kid, and I thought the cars had like a human face. So I really do like casting of cars. But no, I think also cars are kind of the first cinematic experience. No, I remember these long trips from Chile, because Chile is so long. We were all the time in the car, like my first feature film, looking everything framed by the windows. And I think there is something very cinematic with the cars that inspired me a lot to write and to start doing films.
Another element that I find really interesting in your work is it's kind of this combination of again of subtly those emotions, everything like very subtle, the way you approach your characters and the stories, but at the same time I find a very rigorous camera work. You started work talking about your relationship with the cinematographers, but can you elaborate more about that rigorous in your mise en scène and the use of camera? You work with Barbara Alvarez,
Yeah.
Thursday to the Young. I mean, Thursday to Homecoming.
I'm also confusing
mixing both things. And you work a lot with Inti Briones more recently, no?
I think this comes from my early short films. I've been always interested in this unique thing that has cinema, that is the mise en scène, no? That is something that cannot be like a play, cannot be like a book. And I think my early short films are even more experimental, like Debajo, where everything is
Sure.
How you say, cenital. And I'm convinced that the shape and the mise en scène creates an emotion and an impact that is what really moved me to do cinema. It has to do with my interest in photography when I was younger, and I think my work comes more from there, from the framing, than from, I don't know, like the acting. No, I think this moved me. I think I am very inspired by painter also, like painting. It's something that inspired my work a lot. I like, it comes naturally from me, but I think for me it's very interesting the less, what you can do with the less and the less and the less. Is why I really enjoy doing this short film in pandemic, because it was like arriving to the most simple things again. And I like to put myself in these conditions where I have to do the most simple things with the less elements. And also my film school wasn't really like a film school, it was more like an audiovisual direction, and we didn't have anything. We didn't have a dolly. I don't think we have like a tripod. So I was starting my films with nothing, with a very simple camera that cannot move. So I think it's my nature now to do everything with the less possible. And then I love the repetition. I think there is something in the repetition that is something that I do a lot in my films. So it's like creating a system and then come back all the time with the same framing to the same place, and be able to see the transformation of that situation, that character in that displays, and so I work a lot with repetitions. For example, in my first feature film, it's all the time the same. No, it's like I love to find like a specific system for each film, and in that case, there were just 5 possible positions of the camera, and I was repeating that all the time. And for me, it was kind of creating a mathematic system to observe something that is alive. So it was like, even like, I think it's a framing that is not able to contain all the complexity that is in front of the camera. So I like these restrictions, and maybe it's something that I need also. I don't know where it comes from. To be more like psychoanalytic, I had a very open childhood, very open parents, and I was living in a wild place, and I was really I always need to put my own limits, and I I was a very good student. I was really like, and I think this comes from probably with my childhood. So I'm someone that needs to put some rules to be able to live.
You mentioned, that you like the simplicity, and you work with simple things. But it's interesting because simplicity in your work, I don't think necessarily equals minimalism. It's a
No.
your work is very simple, but then again, it's very multi-layered in different ways. And I guess before we talk about the political allegories, one other element that I also find interesting in your work is the use of popular music in all of basically, in your feature works, but also in the short films. You incorporate music, from the radio. I mean, like or songs from the time. It seems like kind of that's the connection with the different times. Otherwise it's kind of it's not really tied to a moment. So I'm really intrigued about that use of music, and more so in Too Late to Die Young, that you have even more a more sort of prominent soundtrack, Soda Stereo and other.
Yeah, I love music, like popular music in Spanish in particular, and I think this also inspired me a lot. I think as you say, like maybe my films are very simple, or I love simplicity, and I love to don't go to the more climatic or dramatic moments in the characters, but to go to the more like intermediate moments that probably a normal film won't show. But I think there I can dig deeper into emotions in the random moments, and I like the contrast between that characters, for example, that are not able to explain or to express their feelings, and this music that is telling everything, like is this like Quiero dormir cansado de Manuel or Sandro, or so I like also to put that music in another world, like in another ambience, like to take it away of the popular or like B music and to put them in a scene. I like to play with that, and I think it comes from my taste. It's the music that I like. It's the music that I grew up with, that we sing with my family, and I think in the case of Too Late to Die Young, it's more complex because it was also a music that portrays a period, music that portrays between the 89 and 94 in Chile. I was thinking in every character and the music that they were singing or listening. And for example, Sofia is listening like music in English because she wanted to leave. She's like escaping, while Lucas is more like loving the music of the place, is listening this Argentinian music. And also it was a time for Too Late to Die Young where there was a huge contrast between this music that was kind of protest or like more political music, and in the other extreme it was Michael Jackson, and I was doing this kind of crash between all of that, and I thought it was a really interesting time for the music in Chile. What is the music with mean, like with the what is the political music, and music and songs and people singing are very important for me.
You were talking about how your films, there's like a connection to the political setting, also very subtle, particularly in Too Late to Die Young, set in the 1990s, once the transition to democracy started, and it seems from what I read that you created kind of those links as allegories, this coming of age, also not of your characters but of a country as well. So I guess the question is, how do you see it? How do you see with the most recent things that have happened in Chile? The social explosion and what's been going on the past year and a half, almost 2 years. In terms of kind of this, in terms of your films, like kind of an allegory of a coming of age. At what stage is the country right now?
Yeah, it's so strange because when I did Too Late to Die Young, we didn't know what would happen. No, I just had this feeling that there was something about to explode, that the democracy that we believe in, it wasn't really strong, and there will be like a fire at some point. And I don't know, I think it's crazy because the film is almost showing the same that happened, no? Like a contention, and a contention that at the end explodes because there's nothing more to do. And the fire is the most visual way to see transformation. And so, yeah, I don't remember your question, but I also, what happened to me now is that I grew up in a kind of unpolitical generation. We were not talking about politics. It's a generation of filmmakers that were really intimate, like talking about our own stories. And now with the social uprising in Chile, we all stop. No, we don't know what will happen, but I think there will be a transformation. And I've been doing a couple of things now. I did correspondence and I did this short film in pandemic, but I'm still not able to see how this will kind of affect my work in the future. I think I was in a time where what was happening outside wasn't that interesting or wasn't that dramatic or moving. And now it's not like this. No, now we got back the politics to ourselves. I think the politics are intimate, is intimate, and I'm extremely moved for all what had happened. So I don't know. It's a strange time. I think correspondence kind of it was interesting because especially in correspondence, in these letters that I did with Carla Simon, we were talking about our life, no? We were talking about like our feelings, our family, like our intimate world, and suddenly this happened, and it's absolutely what you are asking, no? I think in the short film, is that change? It's like, I don't know if I can talk more about my childhood, I don't know if I can talk about love, and yeah, I have the feeling that I'm not interested in reacting too fast to what is happening. I'm not imagining myself doing a political film, but I think this will change my way of telling stories for sure.
I guess what changed was the sense of urgency, you know, in your previous work, kind of you were subtly making those connections with a lot of your political context, but now in the everyday life, kind of the political, you know, broke into. So I guess the need to make that connection is more urgent. Because I guess in that sense, it's in correspondence, you make a direct link to what's going on in Chile. And in that sense, you know, you open the door to the political with capital P. So I found very interesting that that you opened that door as opposed to your other work. But I'm curious in terms of your career. You know, Too Late to Die Young did amazingly, won the Golden Leopard. It was a big achievement, not only for Latin American cinema but world cinema. How much did that award had an impact in your career, or how do you see awards and how do you see the film festival circuit in general? How do you navigate it?
Yeah, I feel super lucky that I had this last film premiere in cinemas. But that time it seems natural, no? But now I remember traveling, meeting the audience, being in Locarno with so many people, and then in New York or in Toronto. It was a film that was in many places, and I was lucky to travel and I don't know, I really, for me, the process of making a film that is always so long, kind of close with the audience and with people saying like, how you, especially things like your film make me remember things that I had forgotten, or like, I understand why I was spending so much time making a film. And I don't know what will happen. I'm going to Cannes in in a couple of weeks. That's weird. I haven't moved from my house in a year and a half. I think everything will change. I think, of course, it opened doors. I think, yeah, I mean, I feel very happy to receive the award, not just because an award, because also that audience liked it, that jury thought it was an interesting film, and I think that opened doors to go to other festivals, and the film did much that I was expecting. I thought it was a more experimental film that would be like in a little circuit, and suddenly was, I don't know, commercially distributed in the US and in the UK, things that I wasn't expecting, to be honest. And it opened doors, especially I think what opened is a dream, is my feeling that I can keep doing what I wanted to do. I don't want to, I think it opened for me the possibility to choose, and that is very lucky to choose what to do or what not to do. And I wanted to keep doing films that are important for me, that are crossed by my experience, and I feel very lucky for that. And I feel lucky that there are producers that trust in my work, and I think everything is changing, no? It doesn't make any sense to make a film that is not important for you. It's like, everything is in crisis. There is like a big sense of like uncertainty. So for me, it's been a time to be focused in the people that are really important to me, in the projects that are really important to me. So I feel lucky that I did that last feature film that was successful, and it was in the cinemas. And I really hope well, you are better in New York, but in Chile it seems we are in the third world now, world. So I don't know, I want to keep doing the less as is possible. I love the film that I just made because they were very, very simple and very small. And for example, correspondences, I did it in movie with the audio in my phone. It was really handmade, you know. And then the film that is premiering now in Cannes, I did the camera myself for the first time. My mother and my sister are acting on it. So it's like coming back to my 20s, where I love this fragility and this handmade, and to work with people that I love. So my challenge is to keep the, ¿cómo se dice? The scale, no? To never lose the scale, because I love the human scale of films, and yeah.
What was the premise of the last project of this omnibus film? What was the premise to make the short?
It was inspired in Jafar Panahi. He was the first director confirmed in the project, and the idea was to work with the limitations of the pandemic. So they invited a number of filmmakers to do something with the rules of their countries at that time. And it was really open. So I had to send like a little paragraph, like a proposal, and they say, yeah, we like it. And so the premise was you cannot see anyone you can't see, you can move to any place you can move. So it was, and now it is better, but last year was crazy. I was like, really, I wasn't seeing anyone in months, and I was seeing my mother and my sister some weekends. So I did the short film with them in the house of my mother in a couple of weekends. It was great. It was great to do the camera myself. Also, I was kind of afraid to do that, and I think it worked.
And you were the only Latin American filmmaker in the project, right?
Yeah, I'm the only Latin American. I think there's a guy from Singapore, Isa Pichapong there too, Laura Portras, Malik. Yeah, it's 7 short films.
Have you seen them all, or do you?
Yeah, I saw them. I saw some of them, but I'm waiting to see everything in the. Yeah, it's always strange what happened with this project. You never know. It's like a collection of short films, but I'm really happy that I got this invitation for Carla first for correspondence, and then this, because I will never make something out by my own. I'm not like, I wasn't like, I want to portray the pandemic or the, and this was like a nice accident, an experiment, and I think both films are a document of my emotional and our emotional situation at that time. So yeah, it was a very nice invitation and experiment.
We've talked about your work as director, but you also work as a producer. I'm also curious to know how do you get involved with the projects, and how much creative input you give to the projects. And you produce films in Chile, Argentina, Costa Rica. So I'm curious about your role as producer.
Yeah, so I will say the same. No, we get involved with projects, more than projects, with people, people that we know and we like, and Cine Estación is a very small production company. We are 3 owners, and there's 1 guy working with us, so it's really like a family, and we try to don't do much to be involved. I don't feel I'm a producer myself, but I like to produce things that I like. No, so I'm really involved with Omar, and I think we are lucky to know producers because of my own films and the people that I know. So we're trying to get people interested in the project. We read many versions of the script. We're really involved in the editing, but basically it's the same process that we do with our films. For example, Alejandro Fadel is a friend, and he needs some help from Chile, and then we offer this, and so it's very spontaneous. And Neto Villalobos also, he's a friend, and I met him somewhere because of something else. But what is interesting for me about having a production company is to have the control of the production, no? And I think production is creative, is language, is everything, is political. So it has to do what I said before about the casting. It's not the same to make like a huge casting or not. It's not the same to have a huge crew, to have like expensive things or not. So I think we are really, I don't know, strict in the way we like to make films, and to have a very warm ambience in the shootings, and to work just with people that we like. And I think that, I hope that is reflected in the films, but it's really handmade and small and precarious, and it's funny because it sounds like a production company, and I know that we've been involved in many films, but every one of that films is been like a night, spending a night with the 3 of us, like doing an application, like watching many versions of the editing. So we are absolutely involved from the very beginning to the distribution, and it's a very small crew. So there is a lot of love and energy putting in every film that we do. You're muted.
Tell us more about your project, Centro de Cine y Creación. How's that going? Because you also opened during all these social protests. The context changed.
Yeah, it's been crazy because we found this house, this old house in the center of Santiago. The project is called CCC, and we started rebuilding in 2019. And when the house was ready, it's a 2-floor house that we wanted to transform in a center of cinema, with a little cinema, with offices, with a coffee and a patio. And then it was the social uprising, el estallido. So we had a soft opening, but we couldn't open. But what was interesting is that we offered a place for filmmakers to meet during the social uprising, and we were offering the space to editors or to animators. So, and I think the people of the industry in Chile relate CCC with a place of that is compromised. And so even though we haven't opened yet, like physically, completely physically, I think it becomes a very important place. I think it's a house that Chilean cinema needs, that is not related with a university or with the state. It's like an independent, open place. And we wanted to be like, of course, like a place of encounter, like a physical place of encounter, and suddenly we become like a online place of encounter. But the community is growing. We have followers. We're doing a lot of online screenings, and the idea is to open as soon as possible with an open air screener, open air cinema, because we have a huge patio, and we did some screenings in the summer, and now we are waiting for the quarantine to stop so we can do more open air screenings. But it's good. We're doing some good I don't know, connections with festivals, and I'm super excited about opening this place soon. I don't know if you know, but in Chile we don't have much cinemas. All the neighbor cinemas have been destroyed.
And one of the main cinemas got burned during the uprising.
Alameda was burned during the. So I think we really need a place like this, like a cinema that is not commercial center with just 96% of American films. So we wanted to be a cinema, but also like a place of encounter, and a cinema that can welcome films that are not in Chile anymore in cinemas. Especially, I would say, Latin American films is our focus for the first years.
And then I also know you also teach cinema, right? How do you enjoy teaching, and what's the experience with the younger generations? Because I guess that's what happens sometimes. Dominga is turning 20, but I guess younger generations, they don't know the struggles, or they don't know. They take for granted a lot of things that people like you have built in different ways. So I'm curious in terms of your relationship as a professor, as a teacher with the younger generations.
No, it's been great. I think teaching saved my pandemic, because I've been focused since last year in teaching 2 courses for semester. I'm teaching for Boston, but from Chile. So it's been like an experiment. I teach when I was 23, but I never teach after that. So it was new for me. I didn't hear about Zoom before. Everything was, I was teaching in English that I'm not that good, but and it's been great because I didn't want to replicate a normal course. I think I was working with what we had, and it was amazing because everybody was alone in their houses. I was in the same situation that they were. I was doing this pandemic film, and I was asking them to do also pandemic films. So they end up acting, almost all of them end up acting in their films, or the families, and it was really, really interesting. I think because we are all living the same crisis all over, I think there was a very intimate relationship, and I was like super involved with each of the films. I love the students. It was amazing. And I'm moving now to Boston, so I had this 1 year experience for Zoom, and now I'm going to Boston in August to teach another year. So I think gonna be a totally different experience. But I love teaching. I think it makes me be all the time questioning myself, my work, and I enjoy it a lot.
Great. Well, Dominga, thank you so much for your time and for your work. Looking forward to watching a new short, and to your other future projects.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and take care. I hope to see you in person soon.
I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Ciao.
We can stay. That sounds good.
Okay.